All right, we're gonna bring this workshop to order. You will just stand and I'll give the prayer and invocation. Lord, once again, we ask you to be with us when we meet, help us, guide us in the right direction, make decisions for our best suit the county and the citizens of this county. Lord, we're looking over this tornado that's come through the other day. No more damage than we got, no fatalities. As always, we look for you for guidance and understanding.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, for clarification, you said workshop, but this is a regular meeting, advertised at a regular meeting, so we can take action on things we want to today.
Yeah, I guess so.
The way you had us set it up,
Workshop or is it a regular meeting?
the way you had it set us,
Workshop,
yeah, the way you had it set us up last time is this is just a workshop.
That's not what I asked for.
But
I
on
did not
tonight's-
ask for that.
Wait a minute, on
What?
tonight's agenda, there is an item for you to vote on, any items you want to vote on from the workshop.
Okay, all right, well, that's fair
You
then.
have the opportunity to vote on anything you decide tonight at our regular
At
meeting.
a regular meeting, yes,
Okay.
exactly, that's why I understood. Yeah. Okay, David, go ahead.
Thank you for having us. As you know, at the last meeting, GSG came and did a presentation.
Hold on, I'm sorry, I got confused here for a minute. I need a motion for the approval of the
So
agenda.
move.
Check.
Got a motion by Mr. Williams, second by Commissioner Witt, all in favor? Aye.
So as you know, at the last board meeting, GSG came and gave you a presentation on options for moving forward with utilities by the county. I wanted to start off by saying, we're going to start by having a brief presentation on our utility projects and an update, so you know, where we're at on the different projects that are going on. Then we'll talk about Fort White for a few minutes, and then we'll talk about the GSG presentation. This is really meant to be a discussion of the board. What we're looking to come out of this is direction from the Board of County Commissioners on what direction we want to go in, because there's a lot of details, there's a lot of intricacies that have to be worked out depending on what direction you want to go in. So if you choose you want to start your own department, we have to come up with budgets, staffing, all that sort of fun stuff. If you choose you want to do what we're doing now, that leads to certain implications. If you do choose to do a regional utility authority, that has certain implications. That's got to be negotiated. Terms have got to be set. If you want to join FGUA, again, that's something that needs to be negotiated. So we're not trying to make you make a final decision tonight that says, this is absolutely what we're doing. We want you to tell us what direction we need to go in, because it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take attorneys, staff time, if we're negotiating interlocal agreements. And so before we invest a lot of resources, we want to know that we're doing what the board wants us to do. So having said that, we're going to give you a brief introduction on the different utility projects we have. And Chad, you ready?
Good afternoon. Did you put any slides?
That's it.
All right. So like David said, I'm just going to give you an update on some of our ongoing utility projects. The first one I'll give you a quick update on is Bell Road. Just a little bit of history. That road's actually in two different parts. The county is overseeing the roadway and the gas construction, and Werner, the end user, is overseeing the water and the wastewater construction. So with the road, we are at substantial completion. The only items we have left are some fencing, some finished grading, and some striping. Other than that, the road's complete. On the gas line, the gas is constructed. It's connected on both ends, and it's got gas in the line now. On the water has been cleared by DEP. It's connected on both ends on 25A and on 441. It's that 12-inch main, that loop is constructed and cleared for use. The wastewater side, the force main, the 8-inch force main is constructed up and down Bell. The lift station is constructed. There are some punch list items that need to be addressed with the lift station, one of them being the remote monitoring system that the city wants on that lift station. So that's being taken care of now. So that's Bell Road kind of in a quick nutshell. I can answer any questions or move on to the next one if you have any questions on Bell.
So the lift station, there's a lift station issue still on for the sewer, is that what I understand?
Yeah, the lift station is operational. It works. The only thing that is not operational yet is what's called the Scada system, and that's a remote monitoring. It's set up to where the city can monitor it from their offices and see how long it's running, how quick it's running, that sort of thing. So other than that, the lift station does function.
Mr. Chair, what's your timeline for calling it all complete?
Again, Werner is handling the lift station, but it should just be weeks away. On the roadway and the gas, we should be finished in 2 to 3 weeks.
So 30 days, we should be complete.
We should be wrapped up, yes, sir.
I tell you what, that facility and the construction out there changed the whole concept of that area,
It looks completely different, yes, sir.
completely different.
Okay, so I'll move on to Ellisville. Just a little brief history. About 3 years ago, we shut down the old 16,000 gallon a day plant, and we built a new 25,000 gallon a day plant with the understanding we would have to expand it. And the good news is we have to expand it. So it's going from 25,000 gallons a day to 50,000 gallons a day. We're at about 90% on that. The plans are being finalized. They're at DEP for permitting. We plan on being out to bid March or April on that, being under construction April or May. And it's about a 9-month process. So the end of 21, we should have that closed out and be operational with a 50,000 gallon a day plant at the wastewater facility. And that's grant funded, that's CDBG funded.
And I asked you earlier, it looks like the fund is going to be enough to do that project.
Correct. That we're basically designing it to match the grant funds. There was talk early on about maybe doing some in-kind services. We're trying not to do that. Once the final quotes, we're going to bid it to where we have that luxury where we could do maybe the construction of a pond, some of those things that we can do as the county forces can do. But the hopes are to have a contractor do it from start to finish.
And that the whole design is where at any time as Ellisville Interchange grows, we can enlarge the sewer system.
Correct. Yes, sir. We'll be able to enlarge that system to a point. One day, if it grows enough, we'll have to construct a actual water treatment, a wastewater treatment facility. Because right now it's just package units, and we expand as we can. That's the most cost-effective way now. Hopefully, one day we'll have to build a 3 million gallon a day wastewater treatment facility, but we're not at that point yet.
How many more times can you expand it, Chad?
Well, it really varies on your disposal, the ribs down there. So right now we've got 3 ribs. This new system will have another 3 ribs or rapid infiltration basins. They're the ponds that collect the water coming out of the tail end of the wastewater treatment plant. So there are some package plants, 500, 600, 1 million gallons a day. So you can expand at least to that size.
Okay.
Okay, so we're good on Ellisville. We'll move to the east side, the Nfmip wastewater treatment facility. It's called a lot of different things, but basically a little bit of history on that. This is a 500,000 gallon a day plant. It's a grant that the county received, and we're actually building this plant in conjunction with the city. That when we're done with it, the current plan is to turn the wastewater plant over to the city for operation. So basically what it is it's a 500,000 gallon a day plant. It's $10.2 million grant. So as it stands right now, the consultant is finalizing the equipment procurement packages, and what that's going to do is save some money. A lot of this wastewater plant is equipment purchases. So we can purchase those directly as a county and save 7% sales tax. So it makes sense to do that, especially on a $10 million expenditure, because you can save quite a bit of money. So the consultant's putting those packages together now. They've given us a draft package. They're finishing them up. We're supposed to meet later this month, the first of next month, to actually put those equipment packages out for bid. And then the county will direct purchase those. And then when the contract goes out to bid for construction, the contractor that bids on the job will know that, and he'll expect that to take place.
I said, I understand that some of those materials that we need is long lead. long lead line?
Yes, sir. And that's another reason why we're trying to do it before we put the bid out, is because there's a lead time on this equipment, especially now. Some of these factories are shut down. So we're trying to get that started as soon as we can. What we're working on now out there is the spray fields that we're trying to permit. We're working on the wetland delineation and the geotechnical reports. All those should be wrapped up in March. What we want to do then is finalize the design on the spray fields. The county's got to work with Weyerhaeuser to get use of that property, either by ownership or an easement. We've got to prove to DEP that we have legal access to that. So we've got to do that on our end, but we can't do that until we know how big the spray fields are going to be, and we don't know that until the wetlands are done and the geotech's done. So once all that's done, we'll be able to submit to DEP for permits. We hope to have all our permits by June or July, turn right around and put out the rest of the contract out for bid in July. And then we follow that same timeline we've always kind of talked about. Let me make sure I get these dates right. So yeah, it's a 12-month, so we should be done by August of 2022, which is the end of next summer. It should be operational. And then we've got about a 3-month monitoring time, which will be October, November of 2022. We should be out of there. So that's kind of the Nfmip wastewater plant long-term. You have any questions on that?
So the earliest it'd be able to be used by a user would be basically January 23, correct?
No, sir. We'll be able to start using it in August of 2022.
Okay.
We've got to run the plant for 3 months under an observation period to make sure it's functioning. And the only way to run it is to actually use it. So
Okay.
August of 2022 right now is the date we're trying to make sure we hit.
Chad, did
Yes,
we
sir.
start the permitting process yet for the deep injection well?
We haven't. We've reached out to DEP, but we've done no formal submittal yet. But yes, we have started that.
I know they have like a 3-year permit, so.
Correct. Right.
3 to
Yeah,
5
and that
years.
is the next phase. I mean, we've got following up phases to the wastewater plant. One of them's a reclaim phase. We're gonna, have to do some work in the plant itself, and then construct some infrastructure to send reclaimed water back to the plant. And then there's the deep injection well too. That's another phase that after the plant's up and operational, we're going to be continuing to work on. So sorry, question?
Here's, and I want to discuss this scenario with the board. As that site grows, the cut that is being applied for by the county is not gonna last too long. And what we do know, what we got to do is to come up with a approved plan for reuse and recharge for that site. Greg Bailey is working on the cut permit now as we speak. But in order to position ourselves to be in the area of being able to add to our cup, we got to have this program set up and approved by Real Water Management on recharge and reuse water so we can add to our cup. If we don't, we're not gonna be able to add to the cup. And we're not talking about spending anywhere for the sense of a conversation from $1 million to $20 million in one time. We are talking about a scenario plan that's been approved by both DEP and the Real Water Management District to accomplish those goals. And there would be a path forward for us to get a additional cup because we have a plan that certain elements, certain yields, we got to be at certain levels on reclaim and recharge, reuse and recharge. So this board is, we got Greg working in one direction, but we need an engineer that specializes in reuse and recharge. to assist Greg in what he's doing. And during the regular meeting, I'm gonna ask for a motion to authorize staff to, send out an RFQ for an engineer that specializes in that reclaim and reuse, recharge. But that's the only way we're gonna grow the cup is by having approved practice in place to be able to grow our cup.
Yeah, I agree with you, Commissioner Williams. We need to direct staff to start looking into that as soon as possible. I think they already have, to be honest with you, at some point, but, yeah, we will have to send out RFQs at some point.
Yeah, because we can't source it on our purchasing policy, so we need to authorize staff to go ahead and get that out on the street so we can choose a person to help assist us in that.
Yeah, I agree with you, understand. We just need them to bring us something,
Okay.
how they want to proceed on that.
Is it the sewer plant we're building now, isn't there a second phase of that where that would be, where that, some of that water would be reused? Some reuse in that second phase, if we ever get there?
Yes, sir. That's the next phase, is to have some reclaim/reuse water. And basically the plant treats the water to a higher quality, and then the end users, the people in the park could use it for certain types. They could use it for irrigation. If it's treated to a point, they may be able to use it in their processing according to what type of processing it is. But yes, you do the reuse, just like Commissioner Williams said, and that does help you on your water use permit, a mitigating factor.
So you know, both Jones Admin and North Florida Professional Services are here. If you have any questions for them. Ms. Bell did submit an application for advanced wastewater treatment, AWS. Alternative water supply, yes, I'm sorry.
Grant, yeah.
I get confused. She submitted that in December, and that was for the reuse, as well as the deep well.
That was for the wastewater plant improvement and the drinking water addition, as well as not.
So the last utility project we're working on now is just what Commissioner Williams was talking about, is the water use permit for the Nfmip. And basically, we had a meeting last week with the consultant, county staff, and the water management. We got a bunch of feedback from the water management. Our consultant's working on all that information, getting it compiled, and they're going to submit back to the water management in 5 to 6 weeks. I'm still trying to get the water plant or the water use permit and the water plant constructed in time to meet the timeline on the wastewater plant, which is the end of next summer. So currently, we still feel like we can do that. I'm not going to tell you it's a guarantee, because I think everybody in here knows what water management is going through right now with Nestle. I mean, they submitted that in 2019, and it's on their agenda for next week. So sometimes these things can get pushed out. We don't feel like that's going to happen to us, but we don't know.
So what was your date again for the water?
End of next summer, August of 2022. I mean,
August of 2022
to
also.
coincide with the wastewater.
Any questions? You have anything else, Chad?
No, sure. I think the other projects we're going to talk about later. So.
Okay, David?
And like I say, if you do have any specific questions, both engineering firms are here if you have any questions for them. The other project is the 4775 Interchange, which of course is on tonight's agenda for you to approve the contract with DEO. Correct me if I'm wrong, the construction for the city side of that is to be finished next summer. So that gives us time to do the 6-month environmental review and do the engineering and design so that things are ready when the city finishes their project.
So the city, the job will be complete end of next, not this summer, next summer.
We could not tie in until they finish this pump stations. So if you assume that that is your starting point of construction, we need to have everything ready to get to construction when that happens. So that would be the start of your construction cycle.
When did we first start on the 4775 interchange? How long has it been?
Well, I remember working on it with Rudy Cruz back in 2010. I remember working on it in meeting with the property owners back when Jesse Quillen was Economic Development Director. So it's been something we've talked about for many, many years. This particular grant that the city has, I believe, has been about 5 years in the making. We've been working with Cornerstone Crossing, I believe that's the name of Scott Stewart's development that he's presented to you, for about a year. DEO's been working with us on the CDBG grant for about a year.
It just seemed like a mighty long time. That's 12 years.
It is a very long time.
I hope we never have another problem taking 12 years to get completed. And it'll be longer than that when we get started.
Well, we'll try and
So
keep
right
pushing.
now, what is your estimated date of having water and sewer at the I-75 interchange operation?
I would, rather than me tell you how long it takes to construct water lines and sewer lines, I would ask one of the engineering firms, rough estimate how long it takes to run water and sewer lines.
Less than a year for that project. It's probably 8 months.
So if we can start construction prior to the city finishing their job, we will. But we want to make sure that the city completes their project first, because we've got to tie into their project.
There will be some aspects of the connection points are going to be limitations. So those have to be in place before you can.
So that's why I said we got plenty of time to do the environmental review, the engineering design, contracting, bidding, get everything ready so that when it's time, we got the green light to go with construction, we can.
Ms. Bell, once the city completes their project and it goes into operation, is there a duration of time after it goes into operation before? Is there some kind of timeline there before because it is a environmental grant, correct?
Mr. Chair, members of the
Asking
board.
questions as you walk up there.
Jamie Bell, engineer with Jones Edmonds. Hi, everyone. So the city's State Road 47 I-75 project, it was funded through a Springs grant through DEP. That grant was awarded at the end of 2018. You're asking about timelines. The project design actually got started off mid-2019. So we are complete, final, ready to go out to bid, which is being the bidding process is being entered into with the city in the next week or two. We're engaging with their procurement staff to get that on the street. And the idea is once we have a contractor selected and underway, it should take 12 months or less to construct the full project. It's a pretty involved project, especially because of the 2 horizontal directional drills going under I-75 for the wastewater lines. That's a big aspect of the construction. And so looking at 9 to 12 months for that, which means early next summer, we expect it to be complete. And once it's complete, there should be no lag between you being able to start the next project on the other side. The delay that Mr. Kraus was talking about is because DEP requires you to have something to connect into before you can begin constructing your new project, which is why this project has to be complete and certified, like certification of construction completion signed by an engineer before DEP will issue your permit and say, okay, now you can construct something that will connect to it.
Okay.
Ms. Bell, just for clarification, are we talking about summer of 2021 or summer of 2022? You keep saying next summer.
I guess that's confusing. I apologize. It will be completed by summer 22.
22.
Yes, once we have to, advertise, go through the contractor selection process, get council approval, and actually get the contractor mobilized. And so we are hoping that they will begin construction by June this summer, and then May, June, and then be completed by May, June of the following summer at the latest. That's the current timeline. Any other questions? I'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so because it is a CDBG project, all services provided to this project will have to go through an RFP process. So engineering services, contract administration services, all will have to go through an RFP process. So this gives us plenty of time to get through that process.
And myself and you and Glenn, we met with Mr. Stewart and his guy, and they were fine with the timeline. And Because we give them the option. Do you want to handle it? You want us to handle it? They opted to let us, correct, David?
Right, they felt that because we can't start construction until 2022, go ahead and let us handle it through the grant.
That's exactly what it says. Okay.
Are there any other basic utility questions out there that you have? Going to the point that you'd mentioned earlier, Mr. Chair, about the pump station on Bell Road, it is sized such that it can handle a Warner. As Bell Road grows out, we'll probably need to work with the city on upsizing that pump station and other improvements.
All right, we'll move on to, go ahead.
I know that we can't look into the future and say what companies might locate on Bell Road, but do we have a idea of per gallon, if you want, if sure it's based on per gallon, what's the limitation of the lift station we got there now? And how much more can it use before we have to upgrade?
That information was given to Ms. Bell again, if you'd like to come up here. As part of the, remember we helped the city do a study on bottlenecks and obstructions on the sewer line all the way to the St. Margaret's plant. She built that into her model, which they completed for the city. It was an RIF grant. And all that information of what we anticipate future growth on Bell Road would be, capacity was given to her so that she could put it into her model.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Mr. Chair, so I might have misunderstood the question. It sounded like you were asking how much that lift station could take, and I don't know how much that actual lift station was designed for because, as you know, it was done by Werner and their folks, but we were given estimated flow rates of 130 to 260,000 gallons per day for the initial phase, and then up to 500,000+ gallons a day. And so we've established that the initial phase of up to 130,000 can be accepted, no problem, with no upgrades to the city system necessary. However, the next phase of expansion, and we use these numbers because they came from Project Bell when they were trying to debate between a couple of different locations to build their plant. And so once you get to 260,000 gallons a day, there are some minor improvements that need to be made to the city system to reduce any capacity limitations. A minor pump station upgrade and some minor force main gravity main upgrades. And then once you get beyond that to the final phase, which is over 500,000 gallons a day, there's some pretty significant improvements needed to the city system to, not only ensure there are no capacity limitations along the line, but to also potentially redirect some of the flow to the Kicklighter plant, because the St. Margaret's plant is approaching capacity. Not too soon, but once we get to that higher flow rate, then we'll want to look at redirecting and optimizing the flows between the plants.
In a layman's term, is that a lot? Is that a lot? My point is, I probably won't be sitting on this board when that happens. And hopefully I hope that grows that fast. But I don't want to be to a point where, we got a problem when we're dealing with a company that we don't know whether we can provide that service, that part of the service to them. And then we're back in the same boat that we're in now.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, the answer is it depends, because there is such a wide range in the type of industrial businesses that could come in. One business taking up the same square footage could have a very low wastewater flow or a very high wastewater flow. And so our recommendation would be within the next 5 to 10 years that projects should begin to be designed and implemented to address those capacity concerns before they're actually an issue, before they actually impede any development. So we identified in the Bell Road wastewater capacity analysis that we completed for the city, we identified short, medium, and long-term range projects. And we would recommend that the short and medium-term projects kind of start down that path sooner rather than later, so that you don't have any impediments to business coming in.
So what is the current flow for Werner right now?
I believe it's only around up to 50 is what they had planned for at Werner.
Yeah, they haven't opened yet.
But yeah, they haven't opened. The numbers they were throwing around were up to 50,000 gallons a day, I believe. I could be incorrect, but
So
like
we
I
still
said,
got about 210,000 gallons a day on that, on Bell Road projects before you have to do upgrades. Am I doing my math right?
Correct, yes, yeah. And I would defer to city staff who obviously know their system even more intimately than I do, but they could take up to 260, give or take, 1,000 gallons a day without needing to start those improvement projects. So yes, you have time and wiggle right now, and as we've seen with these other projects, looking at the NFMIP, you know, they're not gonna come in and build tomorrow. It takes a little bit of time, and so we will have notice, but it would be my recommendation to both the board and the city council that we start looking at capacity improvement projects within the next 5 years, so that you're being proactive instead of reactive with regard to economic development in the county.
Here's, it's part of my concern is that I've met with, about 12 landowners in that corridor. Instead of the Bell Road, I call it the Bell Road corridor. It's roughly, with all the landowners, we are talking about, roughly 10,000 acres.
Okay.
And, all the landowners have agreed that the land in their property in that corridor, they want it changed from ag to, industrial and industrial properties for development, light industrial and heavy industrial. And matter of fact, the last meeting we had the planning department there, and he's getting the maps and already identifying the area we need to change the doodle on in order to accomplish that. So it's going to be that area in the mega site on 90 would be the two largest development areas we have in Columbia County. So we need to pave the way for the future. That this is coming, and we need to get prepared to be able to provide utilities to that site also.
And Mr. Chair, in the Bell Road capacity analysis that we completed, we identified the various projects that would be needed with the phasing plan as well as the estimated costs. And so the city is, and I don't want to speak for the city, but they have a list of capital improvement projects that could be submitted for grant funding as soon as anyone is ready. I mean, they could do it on their own. It could be a collaborative effort between the city and the county. I do know that funding agencies like to see partnerships and counties and cities working together. It improves your likelihood of receiving funding, but you could absolutely start working right away towards accessing grant funding opportunities. Legislative appropriations a little late this session, but next session you could line yourself up for that, and we could start right away kind of getting a funding mix together to start implementing those projects that would benefit both the city and the county.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Board? Thank you, James.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I guess we move on to Fort Wayne.
We'll move on to Fort White. All right, we have been working with Fort White now, as we've told you before, for a couple of years on trying to help them with their clean water situation. They have a water system that they operate that produces bad water. I'll just leave it at that. It meets the minimum regulatory thresholds, so it's not a Flint situation, but it's not a quality water situation. We've been talking with them lately about in helping them with their legislative ask to the legislature, and they've talked to us about the possibility of the county and Fort White working together moving forward. They have two options with the new water. They can either put in a new water supply on the land that was provided by the Swanee River Water Management District, or they can connect to Ellisville. But the key is to get their water supply moved from where it's currently at, because the problem is the water supply more than anything else. We have been talking with them, but we haven't talked to their whole board, and we haven't talked to our whole board. And before we move forward on that, it's something that we felt we needed to address with our board and have some discussions. We have several options that could be pursued in Fort White. One option is we do connect to Ellisville to put in a master meter, and they still run their water system. I think the town doesn't favor that option. I think they would favor the option of, in some way or other, the county running their water system either by contracting with the county, by the county taking it over and running it themselves, or forming an interlocal agreement or regional utility with the town of Fort White to operate that water system, where they would get out of the treatment business because they're buying water from us that's already treated. They wouldn't have to treat the water. And they're just looking, for some things. But before we get into detailed negotiations, we need to know what direction the board wants us to go in. So we want the board to basically talk about that situation.
David, I think a lot of that depends on discussion number 3, what we do there. Because if we vote, if we decide we're going with a utility, then I think Fort White would rather join our utility and be part of the utility and let the utility run the water. But that, like I say, a lot of that, but at a minimum, I think they want us to run sound like they want us to run the water system and do billing and give them some kind of add some to the billing for the town of Fort White, so much of, for each bill. So.
The discussions have been that we'd add a surcharge to our bill for the town of Fort White.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, that is the feedback that I'm getting also, what you just said. And why I like this idea of running water from Ellisville to Fort White is the territory it opens up for us. We have to flush all this water weekly or monthly in order to keep that system pure. And this is one of the things I don't understand, and I think once we get, I'm rambling back, and I'll get back to my point I was making then. When we get somebody to deal and recharge, maybe they can work out a solution with DEP where we ask to put our water, pure water, the drinking water now that we're flushing it, they have enough to flush it on the ground instead of recharging it. And maybe someone that specializes in that can come to some agreement with DEP to allow us to recharge that water that we're flushing on the ground. But I think it's an excellent opportunity to run that water from Ellisville to Fort White. Being able, just by doing that, we'll alleviate some almost $200,000 that they got into it now that they can keep and put in their budget. And if they get a surcharge from it, they are making money.
And if we run pipe from Ellisville to Fort White, we can put hydrants, fire hydrants in, and we could tie some customers to that system, outside of Ellisville with that, piping. So, I would a lot rather see us run pipe from Ellisville than put new wells in and run pipe from a well field out off of Moore Hill Road. I mean, I think the money would be more well, a lot better spent on running pipe. We already have the well fields and the treatment facilities.
And from our perspective for the town of Fort White, if we provide the water, again, it's potable. So they don't have to treat it. So that's a huge saving to the town of Fort White. In addition, if they, it reduces a lot of those costs that they're going to have to do to fix up their system, because a lot of that is tankage and stuff associated with continuing water treatment. So we would pick up their consumptive use permits from their current wells that we could then use in Ellisville or wherever, and they would no longer have to be in the treatment business, which is not a cheap business.
Mr. Chair, I have no problem looking at ways to support and help Fort White, but I will tell you this, because I've lived through it before, I'm not going down the road. When we run this, if we run a pipe from Ellisville to Fort White of mandatory residential hookups. So whatever we do, that is off the table for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Mr. Wick, we fought this battle when we put that water system down in Ellisville. That we were going to have hookup fee and this and that, and the board finally determined, well, we're gonna hook everybody up and not gonna charge them anything to do it, and that's the way, but I will not ever vote for mandatory hookup.
Well, the good thing about that area out there, there's a lot of development left in that area where future subdivisions could run water systems in them and stuff like that from the city or from the county. So, I mean, you don't have, I think it would still benefit us through that rather than trying to make people hook up that's already out there. It's got that has wells, you know.
I
But
think
for
what,
future subdivisions, you could definitely run water to them.
and that's gonna make, the south end grow simply with water available. The lot size can go down, you can have a more dense subdivision, and it would benefit that way instead of a mandatory hookup. And if a person wanna hook up, that's them.
Under our current ordinances, new construction has to hook up.
Yeah.
I'm not talking new construction.
Right.
I'm talking about government telling you what you have to
Yeah,
do. You're existing property.
Grandma's water is fine and she don't want
Sound like you can speak in Atlanta.
She makes them biscuits without water for 40 years. She don't want no city water.
And Fort White is currently undergoing a grant to loop their lines that they got from the Water Management District. That'll help the water quality as well. And they have a couple other grants that they're currently working on. In addition, they've been looking at wanting to build a wastewater treatment plant. So we would, if the board's interested in that, want that included in whatever can be negotiated with the town of Fort White.
Okay, one question. How large of a geographic area is the city of Fort White? How many acres you talking about?
Don't know the total number of acres, but they have just below 400 customers.
What's the,
Yeah, it's 3-something customers.
you talking to me, you ain't worried about him. He's gonna be here for a while. So what is what's the billing right now?
The billing I can give to you, I've got it. I didn't bring it with me. But we've got their billing, we've got their expenditures. We've got all that data in the office, but we didn't want to spend a lot of time analyzing it until we knew that that was the direction the board wanted us to go in. Because there's a lot of details that have to be worked out. We need to know that our board and the board in Fort White want to do this before we spend a lot of time and invest a lot of resources in making it happen.
Yeah.
But we do have that information.
Well, I'm absolutely open to looking at all the options. We just need all the facts, figures brought to us because, you know, as spoken before in this office and on the streets many a time, you know, we received ad valorem from Fort White and we don't hand none of it back to them. We basically give them the sales tax. And but they're our neighbors, they're our residents. We just need to explore all options, what's best for everybody. Definitely.
Commissioner, right now, the county receives all the tax revenue from the town of Fort White.
Yep.
100% of it. And we give very little of it back to Fort White, if any. So, I mean, you know, if we do spend a little money in Fort White, it's not like we're not getting any money from Fort White. We're citizens of Fort White.
That's right.
So let's move on to discussion of the GSG presentation, and then we might circle back to Fort White.
Okay.
We'll do that.
So GSG presented to you last week, and they basically gave you 4 options, sub-options. The first option is you can provide utilities the way we're doing it now. Every time you do an environmental review, one of the options they say you have to consider is do nothing. So that is definitely an option the board can consider. Another option the board can consider is creating a department and providing those utilities ourselves like we do in Ellisville. You have 2 options in that scenario. You can staff up to do it and buy the equipment and buy the utilities, you know, all the things necessary to do that, or you can contract it out. There are firms that will contract to run your utilities for you. When we constructed the Ellisville utility, for the first 2 or 3 years, I think it was, we contracted that out to the same firm that ran the rest areas for DOT. And that worked really well for the first few years, and then we were able to hire some staff like Mr. Moody and some others, and then we started doing it ourselves. We still never created that utility department until last year. So Kevin obviously provided all the manpower, materials, and everything else necessary to keep that utility operating for all these years. So that's an option. So you got those two options if you decide to provide utilities yourself. And then they talked about an intergovernmental or a regional governmental utility. That requires two governments to form an interlocal agreement, which dictates then the terms of that regional utility. They provided two options under that. There is, you create your own local regional utility like they did at 79 in the Panhandle, Interstate 79 in the Panhandle, which they talked about, which is 2 counties and a city forming a regional utility to develop services for an interchange on an interstate for economic development. So that's one model. Or you've got join the Florida Regional Utility, Intergovernmental Regional, FRUA, which is a statewide regional utility where you would be 1 vote out of 8, 1 vote out of 9. They currently have 8 members. So those are pretty much the options to consider in terms of what direction you want to move forward. And we talked with, Joel and I met with Heather Espinoza a couple different times and talked about all the intricacies that are involved and legal intricacies involved. She has sent us sample agreements to look at before we spend a lot of time and with attorneys moving forward trying to figure out which direction you want to go. We need to know the direction you want us to go in.
David, you spent a lot of time with her the other day, or you and Joe did.
Yes.
What do you think about the 2 government utilities, like town of Fort White and the county going into a utility together? And you can always add to that utility another municipality if they chose to join it.
Right.
Did that seem to be the best option to use?
Me personally,
Yes.
I think forming a regional utility with the town of Fort White makes a lot of sense if you want to provide water and possibly sewer in the south end of the county. Absolutely. And Joel has some opinions on it as well.
Well, they're more or less observations. David and I did have a chance to spend over the last couple of weeks, probably a couple of hours talking to Miss Encinosa. And I think her, first of all, her experience is extensive. She actually represents that FGUA, the statewide, she's their attorney. So it gives you an idea who we were talking to. If anybody knows, it's going to be Heather. Her theme was basically, this is more complicated than anybody ever thinks it's going to be. And that one of the most important hurdles for us to overcome collectively is to understand how much we don't know. We spoke to her for 2 hours. We probably could have talked to her for 10 hours and never covered the same subject twice. There's a lot to deal with here. There's a lot of expense. It's basically a whole new world of business that we're talking about going into. Very doable. She's a big admirer of the statute, the concept of this governmental utility authority, something the Florida legislature provided for. The only requirement is we have another governmental entity that's willing to participate, which we all believe Fort White is. Capitalization, putting assets into the utility authority, money that you put in as a board may never be recoverable. Once you establish the utility authority, it's its own animal, right? It's sort of like the SVTA in that it operates on its own, okay? It's expected, or it should be capable of self-sustaining. It's not something we should subsidize. It's not something we should be expected to subsidize. But the initial investment you make in it won't necessarily be returned in dollars. It may be returned in economic development opportunities, providing higher level of service to the citizens, things like that. That's how you look at the business model. So I know you guys are businessmen and you like to look at things in terms of what's my return on investment. This is not necessarily a dollar for dollar ROI type of situation. This is you spend money and the long-term dividends are just enhanced services and things like that. You go ahead and do the GUA because you're not going to need to duplicate services for your what could be 3 different specific utilities. If you talk about Ellisville as it currently exists, Fort White as it currently exists, and potentially the industrial raw water well that you're talking about establishing. If you have everything under the umbrella of the GUA, they've got the opportunity to do rate studies and figure out what does it take to run the GUA versus what does it take to run this industrial well here? What does it take to run Ellisville? What does it take to run Fort White? And those 3 different rate studies. You also have the issue that Commissioner Witt's already pointed out is the mandatory connection issue. If you put that in the hands of the GUA, they have the ability to sort of follow your policies and procedures without allowing politics to influence it. I did double check the ordinance, Commissioner. The ordinance as we have it currently drafted only requires mandatory connection under certain circumstances. They'd be obligated to follow our ordinances, obviously. But the overriding theme, and I think what staff needs to obtain from the board through this workshop is if we're going to go down this road, it is a long and winding road. And we just want to make sure that as we keep going down it, you're constantly being apprised and brought up to speed on where we are. And also want to make sure to impress on you guys, don't expect quick, immediate, fast results in this. This is going to take time. We have to go talk to Fort White. We have to negotiate what they call the business points of the interlocal agreement, make sure they're 100% comfortable. Then we go down the road to the interlocal. Once you have the interlocal, that doesn't necessarily establish the GUA. Then you got to go through the actual process of transferring assets into the GUA, deciding what assets will be transferred in, how are we going to fund initial operations, since we don't have a revenue generator anywhere in the system right now, right? We've got to figure all those things out before we pull the trigger. So there's going to be a lot of planning, a lot of preparation, a lot of updating for you guys. And I think in talking to David, that's the theme we wanted to leave you guys with today is expect it to be complicated, expect it to be prolonged, expect to have to budget for it, right? And in 21, 22, if you're going to go this way, expect to have to find some money that you're going to put into it to get it off the ground.
Mr. Chair, we're going to have to find money anyway. It doesn't matter which route you go down. If you team with the city, we're going to be the ones funding 90% of that, or maybe 100% of that. If we go it alone, we're funding it. If you go a GUA, you're still going to fund it. It doesn't matter. I mean, the funding is a problem no matter which route you go.
Commissioners, when I first got elected, I discussed Ellisville, and all I was told at Ellisville was we're spending $300,000 a year keeping Ellisville running. But when I got to really looking into Ellisville after Love's and the other truck stop and all, that turned out to be a pretty doggone good investment for the county. Because right now, between Love's and the truck stop, we're getting right at $700,000 a year over what we're investing in the sewer system. So it's just like any other business. You've got to invest money in your business to expect returns out of your business. So I'm like Commissioner Witt. The only way we're going to grow this county and get the growth that we need and get the jobs coming in here that we need is to invest in infrastructure. And at some point, you've got to do that.
Okay. And I'm not looking at a great windfall back to the county. I'm looking at being able to provide services when we got XYZ company want to move into Columbia County, give hundreds of Columbia counties a better life by having a good job. All the money we putting in there, that company come and hire people gonna build houses. They're gonna pay taxes. So you are recouping a different way. Maybe not directly from the utilities, but the overall process, you recoup that money back over time is what you're doing.
My point I was trying to make is
Yeah,
we might have to fund this some to keep it operating, but the return at some point is going to be greater than what we're paying to this utility.
I was following you.
And we're also, hopefully, we're creating several thousands of jobs at some point with this utility.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking back at the presentation that we received a few weeks ago, and the local GUA, the local government utility authority, was Highway 79. They had a specific problem. Their specific problem was they needed utilities for economic development. They weren't there, and this is why they did it. We've got the same problem. And, you know, we have through discussions with this board, we've already said that we're no longer willing to have a utility structure where one body of government we don't control or have any say-so is the only player in the game. Now, we've offered to go the regional route with the city. And I wish the city would consider joining this GUA with us, if that's a route we so go, or come up with something together where this board actually has more oversight, governmental oversight over it, rather than just putting all our eggs in that basket. But this board's already through multiple discussions said we're no longer willing to go that route. So the problem still exists. I mean, and I'm not saying get out there and disown the city and compete with the city, because there are areas definitely that it makes sense to keep working with the city, keep helping the city go after funding, and keep partnering with the city. But for these other areas, for Ellisville, for the intermodal park, for Fort White, we've got to come up with a solution for the future. And in coming up with that solution for the future, we've also got to find a way, or we've got to realize, or how our GUA, if it's done without the city, still works with the city where we need to. Because if we form a GUA and that's our version of utilities, that entity is going to have to work with the city in the future on some of these areas where we border each other, where these projects make sense to work together. So that's another piece to this puzzle we've got to come up with. And I understand it's a long, drawn-out process. The other thing we've got to come up with is you already have companies looking at the intermodal park today. So you've got to have a temporary measure of what do we do in the meantime, in the next couple of years, to get that water out of the ground, to get that plant going, to get the utilities we need for that company that may come next year until you get this off the ground. So there's multiple facets we've got to look at when we do this, whichever route we go.
And one of the things Heather recommended, if the board chooses to go that route, would be to contract at least the management of the GUA for the foreseeable future before you get into the actual transaction, because they can give you that technical expertise that you need in proceeding down that path.
And David, I wonder if, because it's so complicated, if we don't start with just one area, if we don't start with a GUA that handles just the intermodal park and maybe expand out from there.
Again, the only issue is you have to have two governments.
Yeah, I think one of the first things we definitely do is contract this out to the professionals and let them help us get this off the ground, get it started. We need people with expertise in this field helping us with this, and definitely first 2 or 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, I think we contract this out. We get a feel for what we've got, and at some point, maybe we do take it over. If it's working good, we keep contracting. We just have to see. But one thing I do like about this here, and I think Joe brought this up, it would be a completely separate board over this utility. No elected officials would be on this board. It would be run like a business, how a utility needs to be run. Commissioner Williams?
Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. If we enter into a agreement with Fort White to form a GUA with them, then that give us the ability to work anywhere in this county. Am I right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So the concept of the GUA is the two governmental entities have taken some assets that they otherwise would have controlled, right? Fort White's going to take their utility. We're going to take Ellisville, and potentially, if we get the WUP, we're going to have the industrial park utility. We're going to put those assets into that basket, and then we are going to collaboratively determine what that board's going to look like. Just like the FGUA, there's going to be a seat for any governmental entity that participates in the GUA, a seat, right? We will decide in the interlocal agreement and in the formation documents what the rest of that board will look like and how the rest of that board will be selected. Ms. Encinosa has said that the more successful boards she's seen, as Commissioner Ford pointed out, prohibit elected officials from serving. Because again, when you're trying to decide, am I going to go out and do a rate study to make sure my utility not just makes money this year, but has the reserves it needs to operate for the next 20 years? Again, we're building from scratch. So these are going to be tough decisions that won't be politically popular. They just won't be. And so you need to have the ability to have these folks, again, approach it as a business. What do we got to generate? What's our customer base look like? Okay, that number of customers times this rate is what we need to be successful. And those are cold business decisions. You know, they're not really political decisions at all. So that was the concept there. And then, yes, sir, once you have Fort White on board and you trigger the statute, absolutely, we can build, or we wouldn't build it. The GUA could build additional utilities around town. You know, if there's other areas, Mason City, if they wanted to go ahead and roll out something. So talking off the top of my head, I don't know anything about the infrastructure of the county. Don't give me a hard time. But that's an example. We've got a bunch of customers there that are looking for, you know, more of a managed utility. GUA goes in there and meets the need. So you'll have something, again, not for the next 10 years, but for the next 100 years that would work, you know, in that vein.
Mr. Chair. I mean, you can have multiple governments in this. In Holmes County, they had 3. Would you not reach out to the city? Well, I mean, I know they said a hard, cold no, but once if we go down this road, this becomes a reality, it's either join or get left behind, and that may change things.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. We would reach out to the city and invite them to come into this and hope they would. But, you know, bottom line is it's their decision. But they are definitely welcome to join in this utility if they want to join in.
And to the other end of the spectrum there, yes, you can bring in other governmental entities. You can also take this GUA, if it gets up to a point where it's making enough money that it's palatable, you could join FGUA and then have their, you know, because what you got there is a governmental entity, a new entity, but it's got more leverage. It's got more authority, more buying power. They're using this, you know, one set of attorneys versus 12 different sets of attorneys. They've got one expert instead of 12 experts when it comes to addressing legal questions and things like that. A lot of that operational overhead that you're going to have that's going to be the same no matter how many utilities you have. You consolidate that and you get efficiencies. So we can always decide, you know, our Columbia County GUA is done really well. We like what FGUA has to offer. Let's fold it in.
And is there like a requirement, so many, you know, so much being produced, or however big the GUA is before Florida GEO would take it over?
I think
This is really what you have to negotiate. That's why I'm saying it's a lot of negotiations to determine how this works. Similarly, there'll be a provision that if you decide you don't like it, it can be disbanded. So it's not saying if you go down this path, you're locked into this path forever. Similarly, if you join the FGUA, they told you at any time if the county wants to get out, they always build into the agreement an option for getting out.
to get into FGUA though, they won't take you unless you're at least breaking even.
Right.
Remember,
That's what I'm saying. We got a long way to go.
We got a long way to go. But I'm just saying, in terms of flexibility,
But yeah,
I said that
it's
statement
an
for the
option.
next 100 years, but you know, you have the flexibility to do what you want to do. The board will retain that, and the GUA will retain.
But Joel, if this utility were to be developed, county, government, Fort White Council has no control of it.
Correct. It would become its
Okay.
own autonomous
So,
entity.
but it's that regional utility or whatever we're gonna call it. It's their decision whether or not they want to disband it or not. It's not government's decision, correct?
It's theirs to run, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And also, it's their decision to do the rate studies. It's their decision to do the increases upon the results of the rate studies. It's their decision to charge for availability fees and mandatorily make people in the city of Fort White or these areas to hook up. It's their decision. We as government, I won't be here neither, but me as government, we will have a say in that, correct?
Your ordinance, they'd have to follow your ordinance. So you
Okay.
have the mandatory hook ordinance in your utility code, the water and wastewater utility code that y'all adopted back in 2012. So they're still obligated to follow the law. So you
Okay, so
guys
that-
are still regulators from that.
I just wanted to point that, make sure that ordinance flipped over with.
We probably need to meet up before we do this, do some new laws, make sure we got it covered.
You're 100% right, though. The operational and policy decision-making for the utility would not be made. This is kind of like PSC, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, Public Service Commission. This would be your regional commission that would decide on all these issues. And again, they're, for the most part, cold business decisions.
And that's kind of why it's as complicated as it is, because before this thing's created, if you decide to go into this with the town of Fort White, we have to negotiate all of this. The ordinances, the policies, the rules, the regulations, how you're going to appoint their board. So once it's enacted, your influence on it is how you appoint their board.
Because simply the research that I did, David, on 2 regional utilities throughout the state, upon their development, the sitting boards at that time had to go back and rescind because there was no way they were going to be able to come in. So they had ordinances in place as well as we do in Columbia County, because I sat in that audience there. I remember what Toby went through. You know, Toby wasn't in office back then, but Annie Lane spanked him. But my point is that both of them utilities that I did the personal research on, they had to disband, or it wasn't going to be formed, because like Mr. Hollingsworth said down there, it's going to be a while before you get into black. And when you're 300 in the hole already, subsidy, we're subsidizing Ellisville, with the mortgage and everything else that we got. Like Rocky said, we'll definitely one day get to that point. And I agree with everybody here. We've got to invest. We got to, and it's like Ron said, we ain't going to get return. We're going to get return, and hopefully jobs and people moving to the community and being an asset. But I just wanted to point that out, because that was one of the, I ain't going to say a shocking thing, but I do know for a fact on both of the ones that I personally researched, if that wasn't the rescindment of them ordinances, it would have not been possible. And one of them's our next door neighbor right there.
Bottom line is that Columbia County's gonna spend that money regardless if they form a utility or not, to keep that utility operating in Ellisville. So, I mean, you can say it's costing us money, but it's really not costing us money. I mean, if we are subsidizing, where we are subsidizing Ellisville right now to keep it operating. But whether we form a utility or not, we still have to subsidize that utility.
Yeah. But eventually we'll get the debt load paid down, where it ain't going to be such an impact.
So if you chose to just form a utility yourself or expand the Ellisville utility, that is an option. And your option is to invest in it, hire people, buy equipment, all that stuff, or contract. So you do have those options as well.
And that's my next question. This is $1 million question actually, is what are our advantages of going the GUA route versus just forming our own internal county utility committee and doing it alone?
So the way Ms. Encinosa explained it to us is whatever the GUA, when the GUA is organized, if Fort White would be eligible to apply for a grant, the GUA is eligible to apply for the grant. If Fort White has their proximity to the river, if they've got some sort of, what's the name of the grants? Water quality grant. If they might be eligible for water quality grants that Columbia County on its own would not necessarily be eligible for. Vice versa, the GUA might be eligible to apply for some grants that Columbia County qualifies for that Fort White might not. And you have synergy there. You bring money together, you spread the expenses, you have a larger customer base. It just gives you that. The other aspect of it is, again, the operations side gets taken out from under the local governing bodies and gets handed over to this other board, which, is viewed by many municipalities, particularly smaller ones, as a strategic advantage.
And there's where we don't run into the political problems.
It depoliticizes utilities.
If the rates need to be raised to make, and that could become a problem.
But plainly stated, that's the strategic advantage to the Board of County Commissioners, is being able to use Fort White status and its proximity to the river and all these other things that might be able to qualify. We would have the ability to write for those grants and use it for the GUA.
Similarly, they could float revenue bonds if they've got revenues to justify. The debt of the utility authority would be the debt of the utility authority, not that of the member governments.
Could the city hypothetically keep their own utility and their own path they're on now, and also join this GUA for the purposes of the areas we wanted to cover?
That's a Heather question. I mean, that's a little different. I'd want to ask Heather that question specifically.
I think that would be all part of the negotiation process.
I guess the question would be, what assets would they invest? Because Fort White's going to donate their facilities. The city's going to, the county's going to donate its facilities and its permit. We're going to put everything under one umbrella. What from the city, because the city needs what they have to operate their utilities. So what are they going to split off from there to put under the GUA? Again, it's a negotiation issue, and I don't know if there's a quirk in that statute. It's a very long statute. that says something effective, you can't do both. You have to do one or the other. We'd have to look that up.
But right
It's a
now,
good
I mean,
question.
go ahead, I'm sorry, Joe.
No, it's a very good question. I hadn't even thought of it.
But right now, I mean, didn't I understand that the management in Fort White, they want out of the utility? I mean, ain't that what we were?
We have spoken with the mayor, we have spoken with their consultant, we have
Uh-huh.
not spoken with their board.
And that meeting, and that'll take place on, the 25th
It is correct.
of this month.
So before we could move forward on any agreement with the town of Fort White, whether it's we assume their responsibility, whether they contract with us to run their utility, whether we just give them a master meter, whether we form a GUA, we
Okay.
need to get their input from their board to say they're just committed to it as our board is.
In fact, that's Ms. Encinosa's recommendation to us was that the board authorize staff to begin that level of negotiation with the town of Fort White. Let's find out exactly what they want to do, exactly how they want to do it. Let's pin them down on that, then start making next steps. Because we know they want out, we don't necessarily know how they want out.
But to keep this from getting delayed, we can, at our subsequent meeting tonight, decide which road we would like to go down.
Exactly.
And then if Fort White decides, no, we don't want to do a GUA, say if we decided, hey, the GUA concept's where we want to go, and they decide, no, that's not the route we want to go, we would have to circle back. But, I mean, I'm just tired of kicking the can down the road and delaying this.
And don't misunderstand, that's exactly what we're going to ask you for at the meeting tonight, Commissioner Witt, is for that direction so we can get this thing rolling forward.
Because again, we don't want to commit the resources to hiring the attorneys like Heather and other resources that are going to be necessary until we know that this is what the board wants us to do.
I just don't want to delay direction by this board any longer.
You're going to give it tonight, sir.
Fort White has a meeting on the 22nd. And, whatever we decide at the board. the meeting
25th.
tonight,
25th.
Me and David was going to attend that meeting,
25th, yeah.
discuss with council of Fort White at that time.
Yes, it's soon.
25th.
25th,
25th, you said 27th. What was that?
It's 25th?
yeah.
Is it on a Thursday or Tuesday?
It's on Tuesday, it's 22nd.
Oh, that is 22nd.
Yeah.
Somebody put it on my calendar on Thursday.
No, it's on Tuesday,
The 22nd,
22nd, yeah.
Glad you told me. I would have showed up the wrong day.
Yeah, I'll verify that, Ron, but I'm sure it's 22nd.
that's it.
Go ahead.
Give the board a little history on making decisions like this. Anytime you make a decision to this magnitude, you wonder sometimes, is this the right decision? We're gonna go back some years ago. The county was providing 76% of the city budget for fire protection. We did not have a fire department. We had one or two volunteer fire department spread around the county. But we was 80% of the damages that was lost outside the city limits. We sustained 80% of the loss of the damages. The night that we was having a budget hearing, we were prepared to keep the trend going with the city of Lake City providing fire services for the entire county. None of what I'm going to say was discussed before that meeting by the county manager or no one else. During the public hearing part of the budget, we had volunteer firemen in the audience and say, hey guys, we can do better than this. Let us tell you what we think we can do or authorize having a county fire department. That was the first hearing. Remember, you can always adopt the millage rate in the first hearing. In the second hearing, you can't raise it, but you can lower it. By this board not having time to evaluate the proposal that was sent to this board, we raised the millage rate higher so it would cover if we wanted to do what we done. During the hearing between the first hearing and the final hearing of the of the budget that year. Now, we still have assessments, file assessments at that time during this process. The board listened to the presentation from the volunteer fire department, and some of us were a little easy about sticking our toes in the cold water. We never been there before. But that night on that second hearing, the board unanimously voted to form our own fire department, which is the best thing we ever done for the citizens of Columbia County outside of the city limits. The insurance rates went down and the property damage went down. And we know that we are proud of our fire department now. There's a fire department in every district almost, and in every district. And the coverage is there. So we stepped out on faith to make this change that has been in under this same scenario for years and years and years. But we stepped out on faith, and by stepping out on faith, it was a win-win for our constituents outside the city of Lake City, the city limits. That's how we came about our own fire department.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
just a couple more questions for clarification. Joel, this GUA, if we go that route, it's formed by interlocal agreement? Is it formed by ordinance as well? I mean, how's it formed? How's it set up?
I don't know the particulars on that yet, Commissioner Witt. The first step, according to Ms. Encinosa, was to do the interlocal agreement, which, as best I could understand from the conversation with her, because again, we were kind of shotgunning a lot of different topics. The interlocal agreement is the agreement to agree, and then there's going to be some formation documents. I don't know if those take the form of ordinances, a second interlocal agreement, whatever that is. The interlocal agreement is, are we going to go down this road together, and what are those terms going to be? And then you actually form the GUA at some time in the future from there. So I don't know what the actual form of that document is.
So the formation in terms of the makeup of the board for the GUA comes out of negotiation from all the parties, all the government entities involved.
Correct. You guys are going to have a ton of input on what goes into it, but then once the casserole's ready, it is what it is at that point. Then it goes off and does, it's Frankenstein's monster at that point. It goes forth.
At the end of the day, the interlocal agreement obviously has to come back before the board to see if it meets your approval.
It's just like you and David both said earlier, she overwhelmed y'all and y'all right there in the middle of the conversation. It just seems as though that to me that, like Ron said, you got to do your homework one way or the other. And it'd be easy for a government official like us to sit there and say how much it's going to cost. Well, you can't get that mindset to start off with. I simply say, it just seems to me like it's going to be a serious path we're going to go down. And it just seems like it'd be our proper diligence to bring all municipalities together in one room with Ms. Mendoza, and she publicly present to us how these steps take place that Joel can't tell us. And, because once it's laid out, what Mr. Witt was saying, very valid point, but these questions can be brought up. She may not be able to answer them all that night, but I just think it's, we're all Columbia Countyans, and I'd just like to see the city, Lake City, Fort White, and us all sitting in the room throwing all these, time is of the essence. And I'm like Toby, I'm tired of, we need direction. We want to get it started somewhere. And, but it seems like she's the go-to person at this point, and that's what we pay her for. And I'd just like to utilize her services and make sure we're headed the right way. I feel like we are, and I'm glad we're here to try to get out of the mud holes, get a start out anyway. So.
And I agree, Commissioner Murphy. I don't have a problem with all of us sitting in a room, but I think tonight we go ahead and move forward with this and start.
Yeah, whatever we can.
Because I mean, we're going to have to hire her anyway, Ms. Espinosa. I mean, that's part of the deal we're going to be doing is hiring her to represent us and to help us set this up. And certainly the city could be invited to any meeting we have on this, to listen to it and help them decide. But I don't know that we need to delay what we're doing, We can have that meeting at any point.
Mr. Chair, I think, Mr. Kraus, you touched on some, this is gonna be a monumental task. It's gonna require a lot of work on all our parts. It's probably gonna be one of the most important things we will do in the history of Columbia County. And it's gonna be important to get it right. And, but that's what they pay us for. So, yeah, it's a monumental task, but we've got to do it. We've got to face the challenge and do it, so.
I agree 100%.
Mr. Joel, during the break, because we don't have some time, before that, you guys word us the right motion to set in stone what we want to accomplish.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We're gonna have public comments.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I confirm for you that the Fort White council meeting is Monday, the 22nd, at 6 o'clock.
Tuesday.
Monday, the 22nd.
Monday, 22nd? Okay.
22nd is.
I knew it was 22nd.
It's a rocky day. We all gonna miss it.
I knew it was 22nd.
Sometime next week.
It is the 22nd, but that is Monday.
You were
Okay,
half right,
yeah.
you were half right, Rocky.
Okay,
Comment.
public comment at this time?
Todd Sampson, 495 Lakeview. I'm in District 1. There were some comments made about the taxes of Fort White, and that's interesting. Owning property throughout the county, I see my taxes here in the city pay the same mills as the taxes in Fort White. So I'm kind of concerned about the representation we're hearing here. The city is willing to move forward. And I'm speaking as a taxpayer and a citizen on my own behalf. I would like to see some partnership moving forward. The North Florida Mega Industrial Park, we paid for through Jamie Bell a study, which should be done here with less than 90 days, about where the water lines are going to provide the potable water. And yet then I see on the agenda where it looks like the county wants to start their own potable water. Well, it's interesting that we're working together this direction and then we're going another direction. So are we going to work together as we invited you guys to do, or are we not going to work together? Another thing about the Fort White Regional Utility, you can go anywhere you want to go with that. The city will protect the 5-mile radius outside of our city limits. Anything within there where we have the ability to provide capacity, we're going to do. We want to do. We want the jobs as much as you guys do. I can guarantee you. I've got 5 kids that are going to need a job. I want them to be able to stay here and not move to Jacksonville. As far as the talks and discussions on a regional utility, that's fine. Maybe we could partner with something to do with Fort White. I could see that happening. I think the quickest, fastest way to get the utilities we need at this intermodal park is for us to get together, as we've been trying to do. Let's get in a room. Let's get it done. I don't know why we can't do it. Why can't we do it? I've only been involved since November, so I'm new to this. I've not been here since 1970s, Coach, but I think we have a willingness to work and do what it takes to get this done. The wastewater treatment plant, you're talking about reuse. The city will be reusing that water. I've been meeting with Swanee River Water Management, as has Mr. Helfenberger. We're planning on adding that to increase the city's water use permit. If you guys go forward with the water use permit, they do have a form, I believe it's a 40B-2.351A. You could easily assign that. Why pay for management on our tax dollar to come in and manage utility when we have a management right here already being paid right here? It would save a ton of money.
I can answer some of that. I think the city's lost, for me personally, the city's lost my confidence. I've heard comments like pipeline to nowhere. I've heard, we're more interested in taking care of the residents in the city. I've heard, hey, let's concentrate on, why are y'all worried about the intermodal park? Let's concentrate on Bell Road. And we said this to you in the discussions we've had in our meetings. We've said, hey, look, we're no longer willing to let one government control everything, because the latest company that came here, and maybe it wasn't a feasible company, maybe it could have been, but it just shone a glaring light on just one government having control. You could shut down that. If we would have decided, yeah, we want to do that, y'all could have shut it down, and y'all would have shut it down.
Well, I believe on that particular issue, there was a letter written that I don't think your attorney would have allowed you to sign, nor would our attorney, about the penalties that were in place there. I don't know which way that would have gone. I was at that Economic Development Council meeting just like you guys and heard that. I can tell you the direction from me personally has been, we're going to do what it takes to provide utilities necessary. Just like I said at our meeting Monday or Tuesday this week, we have to grow. The city has to grow. The county has to grow. We have to provide the jobs. And I was not involved, in, like I said, till November, but I think we're headed in a direction to show that and to build that. We've got to work together.
I understand that. I'm fully committed with working together where it makes sense, but I'm no longer willing, me personally, as this is my vote, I'm no longer willing to have a government body I don't control utilities in areas in the county where we have to do economic development. I mean, so that's why the discussions were, hey, would y'all consider talks about a regional utility? We need more than two people on a committee. We need an actual vote, an actual say-so in what goes on and when, where, and how we run utilities.
And Mr. Sampson, I would remind you, we are in the utility business now in Ellisville.
That's correct.
We have water and sewer in Ellisville right now.
That's correct.
So we're not new to, exactly new to the utility business in the county. We do have utilities.
That's
now.
correct. And looking at the balance sheet, I've seen how that's gone. It's not been the greatest. Now, it will be good, I think, and there's opportunity for growth there too. I mean, I would even be, and Mr. Helfenberger reached out to you guys before, I know through David, the city was even willing to go to Fort White through Ellisville and put a booster station and loop it back. But y'all shut that down directly through the conversations, my understanding, and said that's not the direction we want to go. So we've been offering to help. So to hear that, I think that's incorrect. I don't know if you even knew we offered that. Did you know about that, Mr. Witt?
But we've outgrown that. We've outgrown that because I think we've outgrown the point to where Lake City can control what goes on in the whole county, because these areas of growth in the county are far away from your municipality. It's the same thing that happened with the fire department. We outgrew that model. So look, we want you on board, but we want you on board in a regional utility where everybody's got a say.
So just to be clear though,
We have been told numerous times over the last 2 years, we can do this. No, we can't do this. No, we can do this. Well, no, we can't do this. I mean, we're going back to our potential clients or people coming into the county, and we're having to change what we can do for them every 3 months because what the city tells us they can do for us changes.
well,
And
I believe,
that's unacceptable for us.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, I believe the fact is we have not received a good number, which is why I recommended a strategic plan to go forward with what the numbers need to be. How can you build a utility and not have an idea of what the use is? In my opinion, that's not good government. We need to know what we need, where we need it, and then we can fund it and get together on it. But when we're talking about today's 2 million gallons, tomorrow's 4, then it's 18, then it's 12, then it's 10, how can we build a plan to that?
Just like we're doing in Ellisville, we add on as we need it. And that's what we can do out there. You build so big and you add on. Go ahead, David.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. And this is not to interject in the conversation at all. On tonight's agenda is not potable water. It is the consumptive use permit and proceeding with the development of the raw water treatment plant. So we were not talking about potable water tonight. Sorry if that was misleading. I just wanted to clarify that for everyone. The city did talk to us about looping it from Columbia City to Fort White through Ellisville and back out to the city. This is a plan that actually was created probably 15 years ago or 10 years ago. The city's had it for a while. The decision not to proceed on that was not the county's. That was something we discussed with the town of Fort White, and they told us this is the direction the town of Fort White wanted to go. That's why we want to go to their board to make sure that this is the direction the town wants to go. So we're not opposed to working with the city any way possible.
Absolutely not.
And I think the main thing is we need to come together and meet and start the strategic plan, because regardless, we have to grow in multiple areas. Y'all keep talking north and east. We got growth to the west too. We've got developments going out there that's just as important, especially in the housing shortage we have now. It's going to need water, it's going to need sewer, it's going to need gas. And so I think it's important we work together. But to have a partnership, you don't have one person dragging the other person down the road by their hair. And that's what I don't want to see. I want to see a partnership. You talked about
That's exactly what we're after, a partnership with our utility,
and-
where we have a say and you have a say.
And that's why we invited, Mr. Witt, you talking about that utility committee that we were inviting you to was going to be 2 city councilmen, 2 county commissioners, and then the ex officio as the mayor. That's pretty good representation. I don't think that's ever been offered before.
But the committee does not have a say-so, does not have the end say-so on what that utility does. The committee makes a recommendation. We're no longer willing to not have a say-so.
Well, I agree with that because you wouldn't, as two members of your board, tie your whole board to an agreement of just two members. I believe that's correct.
The committee can make
a utility committee that we're not even on.
I mean,
But it represents the county.
the utility committee can make a recommendation, and you as a city can vote it down, and it's the end of it.
Well, so could you as the county.
No, you still control 100% of the utility with the city council. We don't need to say so on an advisory board. We need equal governance. So set that up for us.
And then give it away to the regional utility without governance. And the other piece of that is, I would look at some of the customer service issues that have been going on with some of these GUAs and the GSG particularly, and you'll find that the customer base that you're serving is not as happy as you might would think, and they do try to change some of that quite a bit.
Well, Mr. Sampson, you know our concerns, so bring something back to us that we can live with, because we can't live with the way it is now. That's what we're telling you.
Okay, I'll bring it back to you. Will you look at it, or we already made a decision?
I'm the only man on this board can give you the history of everything happened in the last 40 years. Only man in here now. Everybody in here, I'm the only man can give you 40 years of history. And we didn't want to be in the utility business. We begged the city to take Ellisville. They told us flat, no, we don't want it. They had bad water down there, and they need to do something. Had businesses down there, we want to do something. And and I don't want to cry over spilled milk, but by God, I'm gonna shuck it down to the car. After the city went to buy us utilities, put utilities in Ellisville, we asked them to put a meter at the Oasis bar. And we were gonna run water from the Oasis bar to Ellisville. The price that was given to us was unheard of, and we would not do that. That is why we built what we built down in Ellisville. It's been those blockages that you don't have in your line. You all been knowing that for over 20 years ago. 20 years ago or longer, that those blockages were there. You had 4-inch pipes going into 8-inch lines going into 4 pipes. That's nothing new. You all knew that.
And it's being addressed now.
Huh?
And it's being addressed.
Let me finish. I sit right here and listen.
Okay.
And you heard me say this again before. We wouldn't be in this predicament with 47 today if the city would have took us on our offer. Dale William and I went and sat down with the city manager at the time and say, 47 is fit to be redone 4-lane. We need to put the infrastructure in to do that. Well, we don't have the engineering and we don't have the money to. We'll pay for it and put it in place. If you all put it in place, and you all pay us back when you get customers. They wouldn't agree to that. So we got this deal been going on for 10 years now. I have begged, literally begged, for y'all bought out Carolyn Heights water supply system. They are down the little triangle between Belton North and Washington Street where it comes to the railroad track. From Buddy Street. Those people cannot use their septic tanks when it rains. I have begged for the last 20 years for the city to run sewer in there. Just across the road right there, all those people have water and sewer because the county got a grant to put in water and sewer in there and gave it to the city. They're down 190. They're by Ken's Barbecue. When it rains, those people can't use their septic tank. I have begged for over 20 years for the city to put a sewer in there for those people to have some relief. Fall on their fields. I don't want to be in the utility business, and I know you talk about west of I-10, I-75. I'm not want to go into utility business to provide residential services way out there. My interest is providing water and sewer where when a industrial client come in this town, we can say it's shovel ready and we can give you everything you need, and that includes water and sewer. That's what I'm looking to do. And that's what I want. Now, to me, it's like making the same decision we made with fire. We stepped out and say, we can do better. This is why I hear this board is saying, we're gonna step out because we can do better. Now, if you all can come up with a way to ease our mind and help us do what we want to, our vision, then so be it. But if you can't satisfy these 5 men on what we want, protect this county for economic development, then we're gonna do it ourselves. It's just that simple. There's nothing against you guys. Y'all give us a plan to accomplish what we want over a short period of time. We lost one business. Where's Glenn? He got 3 businesses right now. He's talking at the business. We are down in the 5 list, in the list down to 5 somewhere in there. So we got to have this. We cannot grow. And here's what's important. When the county grows, the city grows.
That's right. And when the city grows, the county grows too.
Yeah, but we got to have utilities you all got. If you all can provide those utilities, these 5 members right here gonna do it ourselves. You tell that something.
And
Not taking anything away from what the city's doing.
Commissioner Williams, I said in that meeting, at the Economic Development Board meeting, and I heard the city say their concerns was the city and Bell Road. They wasn't concerned with North Florida Mega Industrial Park. I heard that comment made at that meeting. That was not their priority. 4775 Bell Road and continuing service to their existing citizens was what they were focused on.
The proclamation we just made this week mentions the North Florida Motor Park.
That's my point, Mr. Sampson. It changes from week to week. We're tired of that.
But what did the proclamation say, Todd?
We're willing to provide the utilities needed in all of those areas. It specifically calls it out. I've been working on that forever, but it just came out. However, I don't think it changes week to week. Our focus is to provide utilities. We're going to move forward. We're moving forward with Jamie Bell now on the water, the potable water. It's going to be in place. We're taking care of that, what we got to do. As far as from there, we need to work together where we can. We're ready for the wastewater plant. We're ready to move forward on that you guys are building for us, and we'll go together where we can.
And you have financing in place for all this, and you have a timeline in place? What's your timeline?
We do for the Bell Road project. We do.
We're not talking about Bell Road.
I'm sorry, for the potable water at the mega industrial plant, we do. What's that, Jamie? Did we give you the timeline on that? It's 90 days till the. And then we're ready to bid it out.
I'm sorry, Jamie, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
She said 90 days.
You stay right here. Hear what you're saying.
90 days until the pipeline study, but how many days are we down to now?
Residents just received notice to proceed on the water main routing study this week, and so we plan to get that kicked off and try to be completed.
So she's down to 85 days. She better get it done. Just like talking about 47, I believe we're actually shooting for the groundbreaking to be in April, I think we talked about. Not summer, which you mentioned earlier. And it's going to be done in April, and that is going to push that timeline up. Sometimes your engineer's a little more conservative in what they need to be, but I understand that as well. But April is what we discussed. It's going to happen.
Ron,
my way.
140 years, Mr. Williams, have you ever seen a city councilman up here kind of taking the lead?
Mr. Sweat, did you have something to say? We're gonna have to wrap this up pretty quick. Go ahead, Steve. Mr. Sampson, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an interesting turn of events, the way we run government now in Columbia County. We have individual city councilmen coming up here and pleading the case for part of the city council. Probably you guys might want to sit down in the same room and have an official meeting. I certainly understand, as I've been following utilities since 2006, the county's position now, where we hear something one day and it changes the next day. And that's pretty clear right now, what's going on in the city. The guy that's now in charge of all utilities has no experience with water and wastewater. Unless the city gets its act together soon, the city is going to go down like a rock. And there will be a utility war. But that's not why I'm up here. That's for you guys. You're the politicians. You guys need to sit down and straighten this out. Why the committee meeting got canceled last week at the city council meeting was another political fandango. So far, we have 2 city councilmen. I guess next time we'll have another one, and next time we'll have another one, and then we'll have the mayor. It's time all you guys sat down. But my concern is GSG and NGN. That gruesome twosome. And the problem that you have today, and I would like to hear from Learning Council, who represents everybody in Columbia County, from what I understand, I guess it depends, on the policy of this board. There's no exigent circumstance for you to make a decision at the county meeting today. The public doesn't even know this is going to be on the agenda. So this is 45 minutes later, not even a day. This is like 1,000 times worse than Swanee Valley Transit, who calls a mysterious emergency meeting in the morning that nobody knows about, and they refuse to contact the media, and has the meeting in the night. This is 4:45 in the afternoon, and you guys are going to discuss this tonight. How is this how is this in line with the county's policies over all the years, you know, Ronald, that the public gets an idea of what's going to go on, and then they have the right to comment? This is not an emergency. You guys want to talk where you want to talk, have another workshop, speak to the city manager, the county manager, or the city manager, but you are doing the public wrong tonight, all of you. If you put this on the agenda, and if the county attorney, the elected county attorney, agrees that this is the proper thing to do, then he's doing the citizens of the county wrong. There's people that have been here that have knowledge about utilities in this county and things that have gone on. So I'm respectfully asking you.
You realize that all we're talking about doing tonight is authorizing the county manager to meet with the town of Fort White?
No, I'm not.
This
is what's with GSG. You guys have been talking with GSG. You're talking about this regional utility. You guys are going to meet with Fort White anyway. Anybody can go to that meeting. My concern, and I heard what's going on with GSG and NGN, and let me remind you, Commissioner Williams remembers, maybe, that the federal government, those guys were so tight that in a $30 million federal grant plan for broadband, those 2 guys said that if those 2 companies, get right across the hall from each other, didn't resign from the project, the federal government would go back and get all the money, and probably people would have gone to jail. So I think you guys need to look into this. And I really believe, and I believe this firmly, that if we would have kept, and I'm done, county EMS, Toby Witt could have run county EMS. He's an expert in EMS. And there may be enough experts in Columbia County to run a utility, if that's the way you want to go, without GSG. Then you got to spread out the money some more with NGN. With all due respect to the county attorney, he's not stupid. Shit isn't rocket science. Anybody can do this. So he's smart enough. He went to law school. He could figure it out with the right counsel. So all I'm asking you is not to move forward with GSG and NGN and working with GSG this afternoon until the public is notified properly that this is what you're going to do. Thank you. I'm done.
But look, it would have made a hill of beans. Remember my first comment? No, you wasn't here. You was late. You got to go sit in the corner.
I thought it was 3:30, sorry.
I asked the chair, was this advertised as a meeting or a workshop? Because I asked for this to be a meeting,
Right.
so we could do what we want to do. And staff informed me that it was a workshop, but on the agenda, we can discuss what we want to do on the workshop at the general meeting tonight.
Right, but you're not gonna have.
Item number 10, approval of workshop recommendations.
Right.
That's
So
what we're,
that's fine.
it's advertised.
But the workshop is now.
Exactly. At the regular meeting, it's advertised on item number 10, approval of workshop recommendations.
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
and on the agenda for the workshop, it's clearly 3 items: utility project Fort White and discussion of GSG presentation, which you can find the GSG
Yeah,
presentation.
I get that. I read
In the
that.
material.
I'm not gonna argue.
And nothing, I can't foresee anything we're able to vote on in our next meeting tonight, not being anything we've talked about and advertised.
Discussion of a GSG presentation is not an action on the GSG presentation.
And I don't think this board is
That's fine.
prepared to vote anything tonight to do with GSG. We're just talking about the options they presented, Stu.
Okay, well, that's fine. I just want to make clear that, because I hear you're going to act on this tonight. And I follow this pretty close, and if I'm confused.
Item number 10 on the agenda
Yes, sir.
is approval of workshop recommendations. So whatever we recommend in this workshop, we can vote to approve or not to approve in item number 10. And the workshop was advertised.
Yeah, I get
I
that
don't know
part.
where
So,
you're
so
coming
the
from.
simple matter is, you still have a 45-minute notice. Because whatever you approve at this meeting is going to be approved 45 minutes later at a regular meeting of the county commission. Come
We're not
on,
approving
folks.
nothing at this
Thank-
meeting. We're just
thank-
having a
thank-
discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, so do we have a recommendation that we want to vote on tonight?
I think that's comes with your next meeting.
Come to the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, let's call, can I get a motion for adjournment?
So
So
move.
move.
So, all in favor, say aye.
Whoa, Joel's waving his hand.
Did you move to adjourn?
Yeah.
I apologize. I thought you were calling for a motion.
Sit, get on back to sleep over there. Boy, how much we paying you an hour?